Mr. Lewis had always believed that time moved forward, until he realized that, in his classroom, it had stopped 30 years ago. Mr. Lewis had been teaching at Blackwood Elementary for over a decade. It was an old school, nestled deep in a quiet town where nothing ever seemed to change. The kind of place where time felt slower, where traditions lingered, and where faces, familiar and unchanging, passed through the hallways year after year. But it wasn't until one late evening, while sorting through old records, that he noticed something that made his stomach tighten with unease. He had been flipping through a dusty stack of yearbooks, absent-mindedly glancing at the class photos, when something caught his eye. A face, a child's face, staring back at him with a vacant expression. At first, he thought nothing of it, but as he turned to another yearbook, then another, his breath caught in his throat. The same child, the same blank expression, the same name. Year after year, no change, no growth. He went further back, his fingers trembling as he traced the faces on the glossy pages. 30 years. The same children had been attending Blackwood Elementary for over 30 years, never aging, never changing. Panic set in. He rushed to his filing cabinet, pulling out old attendance records. The names matched perfectly. These children weren't just similar, they were identical. The dates beside their names confirmed it. They had been here since the late 80s, yet today they sat in his classroom, just as they had for decades. His stomach twisted. This was impossible. A mistake, surely. But as he stared at the records, something inside him whispered that this was no clerical error. The next morning, Mr. Lewis walked into his classroom with a strange heaviness in his chest. He scanned the students sitting before him, the same faces from the yearbooks, the same unblinking eyes. He could feel them watching him, studying him as if they knew what he had discovered. A cold sweat formed on his brow. During lunch, he pulled aside Miss Carter, a teacher who had been at Blackwood longer than he had. "Hey, have you ever noticed something strange about the students here?" he asked hesitantly. She gave him a sharp look, then glanced around as if making sure no one else was listening. "You've been looking through the yearbooks, haven't you?" she murmured. Mr. Lewis felt his throat go dry. "So you know?" she sighed. "We all know. We just don't talk about it." His heart pounded. "But how is this possible? Who are they?" Miss Carter shook her head, her expression dark. "No one knows. New teachers notice, just like you did. Some try to leave, but they always come back." A chill ran through him. "Come back?" She hesitated, then leaned in. "They disappear. Then, weeks later, we see them again, teaching, acting normal, like they never questioned it, like they never tried to leave. They don't remember what happened." She swallowed hard. "Something won't let them go." That night, Mr. Lewis decided to leave. He packed a small bag, got in his car, and sped toward the highway. The town blurred past him, a dark mass of silent houses and empty streets. But as he reached the city limits, his headlights flickered. The road ahead twisted in an unnatural way, looping back toward Blackwood. He slammed the brakes, his pulse racing. No matter which direction he turned, he found himself back at the school, its windows dark, its walls looming like a silent predator watching him. The next morning, he walked into his classroom. His students sat quietly, their faces expressionless. They were waiting for him. Mr. Lewis took a deep breath, his mind foggy, his memories slipping like sand through his fingers. He couldn't remember why he had tried to leave. He couldn't remember what had scared him. All he knew was that he had a job to do. "Good morning, class," he said. And the children, those same unchanging children, smiled back. If you enjoy this horror trip, then like, share, and subscribe, and stay safe.